this tool helps us get bigger, right? It helps us hold, because our knowing our dominant type is really just understanding the most like constricted, limited version of ourselves, right? When I'm acting like my social 7 or you're acting like your type 3, you're not getting all of us.
Hello, and welcome to Working Your Way, the podcast dedicated to exploring the journey of authenticity in the workplace and discovering how to navigate it your way. I'm your host, Sandhya Sudhakar, and this episode is part of a series called Tools to Work Your Way. Now, in this series, I'm introducing you to my favorite tools, the ones that have really shaped my own personal and professional growth the most and helped me show up more authentically in my own career so that I can work my way. We'll cover some more corporate assessment tools and some tools that are not typically used in the workplace. Now, these tools aren't about defining who you are, but instead about helping you uncover insights about yourself, what you're great at, how you best operate, all so that you can show up more intentionally in work and in life. So for each of these episodes, I'm bringing on a co-host, someone who's just as passionate about the tool that we're exploring as I am. And whether it's a fellow coach that I've trained with or a friend that I've swapped endless voice notes with about this particular system or framework, we'll dive into our own personal insights, and we're going to talk about how you can use these tools to spark your own journey of self-discovery and growth and use them to work your way. So let's get started. Hi, Erin. I get to say welcome back to Working Your Way because you have been on before.
I know, it was one of my highlights of 2024. I loved it.
Stop it. Okay, just for the record, and we'll put this link in the show notes, Erin went on Pantsuit Politics, and so I don't think that you could say that my podcast was a highlight of 2024. That's crazy, but I appreciate you.
It was. I think the authenticity of being able to talk about the things that you love with the people that you love is solidly I'm living my dream, So yes, it was.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I agree. I agree. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you a little bit for anyone listening. And a couple of things I want to say about you. Yes, Erin has been on Working Your Way before. Actually, episode 42, which I just was referencing the other day, is a podcast about how does your past impact your work habits. And so we got into how childhood stuff really impacts how we show up at work today, and maybe where some of the habits that you have in your work life came from something that's really deep-rooted and ingrained in you from many, many years ago. So that was a great episode. And you are an Enneagram teacher, a behavior expert. Erin runs the Living the Enneagram Instagram account, which I especially love because, well, one, that's how we found each other, because I think you had posted something kind of irreverent, or I don't know, maybe you were a little fiery that day and you posted something about Enneagram and I was like, yes, this. And that's kind of, I think, how we came to know each other. But also I love how you go into the really deep, important stuff, but also have silly memes about Ted Lasso or something. So you kind of do the whole let's get light and fun with it and let's get deep and transformational. So I appreciate that about you.
Yes. Yeah, that is how we met. And then I slid into your DMs and was awkward and weird and was like, "Hey, can we be friends?"
For the record, I think I made the first move, but you then really the DM side was the thing that solidified it. So and I was like, yes, let's have a Zoom. I love it.
Yep. And here we are, years later.
And here we are. Exactly. So today we're going to talk about the first of this series that I'm doing about tools that I really love that help us work our way. And what that really means is, how can you use a tool to learn about yourself, to understand yourself better, to articulate and put words to what works for you in your career, and sometimes use that to advocate for your needs with others or communicate things to others or just see patterns that maybe aren't helpful or serving you. And so I'm highlighting all of my favorite tools. It's only appropriate that Enneagram is the first one in this series because It's the one that you and I use both most professionally
Mhm.
in our work. So
Yeah. And I love that you call it a tool because it's what it is. It's something that it enhances or adds value or maybe speeds up an area of expertise, right? Like, I think too often we try to make these tools, personality profiling tools, a framework, like they're rigid and they work for everybody and it's the same for everybody. And so I think your language is really important to sort of exemplify that this is like an add-on that helps make the work we're already doing more helpful, maybe because it adds language or helps us see ourselves in a way that we didn't before, whatever it might be.
yeah, I love that. And I will say I use the word framework a lot for Enneagram, which is funny. But the way that I see it as a framework is like something that this is like a consulting term. I think it's like something that McKinsey says, which is like very silly, but like mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And so it gives me, and the way that my brain works in a structured way, buckets to think about what are all the different ways that people operate in the world? What might be those 9 core inborn temperaments or like things that turn into what the core motivation is? And because of this framework or these buckets that we can kind of like gather our thoughts into, not to say like everybody fits neatly in a bucket and it fits 100%, but it allows me to then see, oh, I am in this space and someone else is in this space and we're not in the same space. So this is why we have tension. This is why we don't understand each other. This is why I'm trying to get clarity when they just want to get out of a conversation or whatever it is. So it's helpful for me in that way to think about it as it gives us some structure to think about our behavior versus others.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think in that way, it is a framework, right? Like, I was trying not to be too nerdy, I think we try to make it a theoretical framework, right? Where it's got all of this like scientific evidence, like cognitive behavioral therapy, where like we sort of move everybody through this therapeutic framework and we output similar results. And I think you're creating so much more space in it by using it as a container or a tool or framework that allows us to sort of operate within it to make the space smaller, make the information more digestible for us as what it means to be a human.
Yeah. And I think to that point, it is one of the reasons that I feel professionally it is challenging to use this tool because people want to, in my experience working with teams, with leaders, with individuals, people want to take a test and get an answer and have that answer be the thing that they go then do something with. And Enneagram is not that. Even there are online assessments, right, that will give you a score or a set of scores that are going to say most likely these are the top options for you to explore for your type. But getting to your type in and of itself is an exploration. It is a journey. It is a process. It is sometimes something that takes people years to really land into their type. It's not going to be a 20-minute answer some questions online and you're going to get the answer computed for you. And so that's something that it's still the best tool that I have found for us to develop our emotional intelligence, for us to see the things that we might not see just operating in our day-to-day to help make those connections. And it's hard because what people want is just for me to tell them the answer. And I won't, and I can't. So that's like, it's a hard thing.
It's a battle. It is. And it sort of filters out for us naturally the people who want to do the work and people who don't want to do the work. Because the Enneagram is a tool for self-reflection and self-discovery and growth and transformation. And it's work. It is work to heal and to grow and to evolve. And so it does sort of, okay, you want an output of a number and a result, and we probably don't work the same on the human condition. And so for me, that is refreshing to sort of filter it out a bit.
So in terms of, what it is, right? How to use this tool. One of the first things that I would say that's important in using this tool is exploring and discovering, I'll use the word discovering your type, because it is a discovery process. And so even in the process of identifying what that dominant type is for you, there's a lot of reflection that happens. There's a lot of, I know that you probably have this experience, I certainly do, where I'm doing a typing interview with somebody and they will tell me like, I've never been asked that before, or I've never thought about that before. And that to me is a great sign that like even this process of getting to your dominant type is helpful.
Yeah, I have done a couple of thousand typing interviews over the last like 15 years. And it is, to me, a really sacred experience because every single one of them is different. And every single one of them, almost all of them, folks are like, wow, I feel really seen. I feel like I know myself a little better. And it's like, yes, that is like, we could stop here. This is so cool.
And to be seen in a process where it's you exploring and searching and reflecting, like that's pretty cool because it almost feels counterintuitive in a way, but like I think that's one of the beautiful things about this tool. And so I don't want to get too much into all the basics because I do have 2 episodes that I did a while back that we can reference people to in terms of like if you want to know some more about the logistics and things like that. But identifying your type is kind of the most important first step. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And then what do you do with it once you know your type?
One of my favorite analogies, and you can add to this or pull it apart, is to think about knowing your type is like getting a pass to a gym. And it's like, okay, I've got the entry point. And then what I do with it is I actually go to the gym and I work out, right? Like I've got to use the information in some ways to strengthen parts of me that maybe have been neglected or underdeveloped or that I've pushed aside or disassociated from out of safety responses. And then what it would be like to let some of these other areas rest because they've overfunctioned, right? And so it's like I have an entry point in, but the gym is expansive and there's so many different pieces of equipment that meet me where I am specifically. And so no 2 people are going to enter in that space and do the same thing with the same experience every time. And so to me, that's the sort of easiest way to describe a really complicated model.
Yeah. And I love what you added on there of like, it's a gym where like, this is without going all the way down a rabbit hole of an analogy, like it's a pass to a gym where all the pieces of equipment like fit you. And you could choose which one, which exercise you want to do or which class you want to go to. But like, there's a lot and they're all going to like fit in a way. People talk about Enneagram as like, it can kind of give us a user manual to ourselves, or it's a way to see, for me, and the way I think about it is like, when we can understand the stuff that's happening underneath the surface, the subconscious, the unconscious, what are those internal things that are driving me to show up this way, to behave this way, to be triggered by this thing, or even the natural innate talents that I have because I have these very well-developed coping mechanisms in the world that I can actually use for good and not evil, right? And like, and I say that, as a joke, but we get to lean into the things that make us really unique and special. And so we'll get into our types, but just an example of that is like, so I'm a type 3 in the Enneagram, and one of the things about this type is this like external referencing, like reading the room, understanding social dynamics, being able to kind of read what people want from me, what they expect from me, what they value. Now, I can use that to become that thing, which is like the pattern of the type. And that's the thing that I'm trying to unlearn. Or I can use that to say like, I actually know how people operate in a space or how to tailor information so that they can hear what I have to say, or how to design an experience that will work for people because I have that ability to kind of quote unquote read the room. And so I get to use this as a talent versus the unconscious way that I might like shapeshift or become a chameleon to become what other people want.
Yeah.
So I love that idea of like the strengths. And I'm curious, like for you, do you want to talk a little bit about
Sure.
what that might be for your type?
Yeah. So I fixate as a socially dominant type 7. And I say that because I bring the subtype in because for me, I fixate in the counter type of 7. So all of the sort of dominant information you hear about 7, I suppress. And so all of the impulses, all of the, sort of things I have learned in the context of my environment, those things are not okay, like tuck them down. And so it's sort of like wreaked havoc on my nervous system. And it also has helped me unlearn the art of self-sacrifice. That's kind of the MO of a social 7, is have the impulse, recognize the impulse isn't okay, and then give it away, give it to somebody else. And so I've spent, the better part of 4 decades giving away those impulses. And it was the recognition of what I was doing was in this denial of self. And so I have had to learn really hard lessons as an adult of what it means to know myself, to prioritize myself, to keep something and not give it away, and then deal with the shame and the guilt that might come up with it. And so that dance that I have around giving into my impulses, there are times where I'm like, I do just want to give it away. I do just want to lead with generosity strictly because that's my choice. And yeah, it may be part of my habit and part of my instinct, but at least sometimes now I'm doing it consciously where I'm also withholding and keeping some for me too. So it's been a really complicated journey in understanding myself. And I'm not all the way there, but I'm working on it.
Exactly. I don't think any of us ever are or will be in our lifetimes. But what would that look like for someone who is not a counter type for the 7?
For the 7, yeah. So it would probably look like the opposite, where maybe the impulse is like, I want to go do this thing. So I just go do the thing, right? Or I want to go here, or I want to do this. And it's like, oh, maybe I should take a breath and put a little time and space. First, really check, do I actually want to do this? Or is this just a habit? It's just this easiest thing. And is there somebody or something else that might need to be considered before I go do it, right? So it's that true impulsivity for the sake of safety in that dominant 7, the self-pres or the relational 7, you can see it more.
Yeah, acting on every kind of impulse, desire, spark to something interesting. And so what does it look like to give that away to someone?
Oh my gosh. I mean, to give it away, at least for my story, it was in service of belonging. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be validated. I wanted to, sort of have my existence acknowledged. And now at 10 or 15 years old, I didn't have that language. I do at 44 understand that that's what I was doing. But it would be like, I would maybe want to go buy myself a new shirt. And instead of buying it for me, I'd buy it for my sister, or, want to go get my nails done. Instead of getting my nails done, I'd treat my best friend, right? Like I'm just not giving in to the want for me and providing it to somebody else. And so it always sort of secured relationships for me, but oftentimes not out of authenticity, not out of safety or me being myself, but because of that reciprocal relationship, which can make me look behaviorally a lot like a 2, right? Where there's this, but I'm not looking for anything in return. Actually, the return is really vulnerable because I don't want you looking too closely at me because I don't want to be exposed. I don't want you to actually see that I want these things in the first place.
The denial of the impulses, the denial of the, I'm going to move toward fun and excitement and freedom and possibility.
Yeah.
Countertypes are something that we're not going to get into today, other than like your lived experience. But it is something that they're hard to figure out. They're hard to identify. And I think that's one of a couple of reasons it can be challenging to find your dominant type in the Enneagram, because everyone's lived experience is totally different. And now we have all of these layers that we can recognize now that maybe weren't recognized or included in the teachings, in the readings, in the well-published books of this tool, like identity. How does the manifestation, so like the core thing about the Enneagram is we can identify the core motivations behind the actions that we take or the way we show up in the world. And so that thing manifests itself through our behaviors, but it's going to manifest itself differently for someone who identifies as a woman versus someone who identifies as a man, just based on how we're socialized. It's going to manifest itself differently for someone who might feel safe to express anger in a conference room versus somebody who can't do that, is not allowed to do that. And so that's an important piece of this. And I think it's one of the reasons typing can be challenging in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because an algorithm can't take into consideration developmental trauma or identity or culture, upbringing, or, it just can't. And so it's trying to filter down to, a single line of behavior to motivation. And we're just too complicated for that.
Yeah, and neurodivergence, which is what I'm exploring for myself too, of like, not everyone who has ADHD is a 7 or a 6 because they have like lots of thoughts, And so it's like that kind of stuff too is really important to think about, right? And that's why the typing process, I believe probably for you, is so sacred. And for me is also like, it is kind of a really cool experience that I get to have with somebody to like, I get to try to peel all these layers off to get to like what's at the heart of who you are and how you operate.
Yeah. And an algorithm can't do that, but a peer or a fellow human can hold space for that. And I think that's where the ability to really see the folks that we're serving, because it's like, yeah, I'm going to hold your whole humanity alongside this tool. Let's go. Let's figure it out.
Do you remember what was the first thing that got you interested in Enneagram, or like, why did you pick up that first book or whatever class?
So I worked for a sort of multi-level marketing company. It was like a in-home party plan kind of thing as my first job out of graduate school. And I did a lot of the health education that came with the job. But I was on the team that did a ton of speaking and a ton of traveling. And so the president of our company was a type 3. And so he was always like, okay, let's learn the next thing. Let's do the next thing. And so we were learning from everybody. We got trained in neuro-linguistic programming, and we got trained in the DISC assessment, and we studied Tony Robbins for a long time. And it was just all of this great exposure. And so I was trained in a lot of tools through this job. And one of them was the Enneagram. And we had, who ended up becoming my master Enneagram teacher, her name is Debbie Otten. We had her come in for a week, and she trained a small group of us. And it was at the time in my life where I was going through a lot of transformation. I had gotten married young and divorced young, really didn't know myself very well. And all of a sudden, I had pages and pages and pages of language. I was like, whoa, this is me. Funny story, though, is I really, really wanted to be a 3 because my mom is a 3, and that was how I was raised. And I just remember Debbie sort of like patting me on the shoulder, and it was like, okay, honey, and just letting me.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, exactly. Just letting me be in that space until I came to the 7 on my own. And so we spent a week with her. We spent 8 hours a day, 5 days, really getting immersed in the modality so that we could use it at a really high level in our organization. And it just provided a clarity that I had never had before. And so I eventually reached out to her school and I started going to therapy under one of their therapists that was trained in the Enneagram. And then I started studying under her and I spent, probably 4 years in learning groups, 2 years to be a certified teacher. And then I spent like another 2 years in her consciousness groups. And it was at one point where she was like, you need to go out into the world. Like, you need to quit consuming the information and go do something with this.
Yeah.
She sort of like kicked me out. Not really, but like in a loving kind of way. And so the Enneagram and Debbie and the school that she created, the School of Conscious Living, was a safe haven for me to do self-awareness and self-reflection and healing work at 30 to like 36 years old that I had never done before. And so I just really think I was very, very fortunate and lucky that it fell in my lap. I didn't have to go seek it out.
Yeah, it makes me like also just want to acknowledge like the depth of this tool versus a lot of things out there, which again, I think every tool is useful if you're taking something away from it that is new information for you about yourself or something that you can do differently. But the depth of this tool makes it such that like you literally could be in her classes, in her groups for the rest of your life and never go be a practitioner with it.
That's right.
And like just learning more. I don't think I'll ever know everything there is to know about how to use this tool and how it applies to 9 different types of, kind of psychological like ways of being and emotional ways of being. But every time I do something with Enneagram where I'm learning as a practitioner or as a coach or a guide for this work, I have like major insights about myself. And I think that maybe true to some extent with any tool because I'm always going to apply it to myself and like find that learning. But it's not like you go to a training and you like learn new things about other people and how to work with other people. It's like you're doing really deep self-exploration along the way and in that understanding of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I found Enneagram, and I've talked about this before, so I'll keep this kind of brief, but I found this tool at a time in my life where I was like, what is going on inside of my body? I had gone from like these high highs to these low lows in my professional life. I was in a relationship where I was like, I don't feel understood. And my emotions were really, that coupled with some things that were triggering like an anxious attachment and all this other stuff. There was a lot. I felt emotionally kind of like chaotic on the inside and felt kind of like from a work standpoint, like empty and like, I just don't care about anything. None of it matters. Like, and so, and very just unmotivated, which I was like, this isn't me. I love work. I love to contribute and to do things and to feel productive. And I can't access any of that right now. And then on the other side, from a relationship standpoint, I just had like so many emotions and like so much stuff. And I couldn't think about anything else except for all this stuff that was going on inside of me. And it was really confusing. And so I think that may be some bit of truth for a lot of people who find tools at different times in their life. It's because it's like, what is going on? I need to figure out how to like not feel this way anymore. And I had an old boss who had mentioned it, that she really loved it because I have always loved these kinds of frameworks like Strengths Finders, which is now called Clifton Strengths. I use that in my work life, and so I always loved the learning that came along with these kinds of things. And I had a book, I just picked it up and because I was like, what is going on in my life? And that's where it started. And it was so enlightening for me. I actually mistyped as a 2 because of a lot of that relationship stuff that was going on. And then later found, actually, as I was sharing the tool with other people, that I was a 3, truly. But it came through kind of like a moment in my life where I was like really confused about what was going on. I was acting kind of what I would consider like out of character for myself. And it made me curious and also maybe some like necessity and urgency of like, I need to solve this problem. How do I get out of this situation?
Yeah. That need for a fix.
Yeah. So if you were talking to someone, which you do all the time, so this should be easy for you. Like if you're talking to someone who's never heard of Enneagram, what would you tell them would be like a couple things that they can better understand about themselves by using this tool?
Whew. So I have a major character flaw of saying less. I don't do that well.
The inability to say less.
Yes, that's what it is. Like I think if I had to sort of sum it up, that it helps us like sort of hit fast forward on the language that we might identify with in understanding ourselves. Yeah, just a way to make it faster, to get there more quickly.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I probably said this already, but to me, I would describe it as a way to really understand what motivates your behaviors or your internal and external experience of the world.
Mm-hmm.
What is the kind of like underlying thread or theme that can help you kind of make sense of how you show up in different ways and different times in your life and different moments? And so we have started to have this conversation, but a couple of things that are personal learnings, insights, things that you've discovered about yourself, or ways that you found language to put to something that you maybe already knew. What comes to mind when I say that? Because there's probably 8,000 things you could answer to this question, but what pops up first?
I think the thing in retrospect that feels the most clear is the way that the counter type for me, the social and the 7, have made me feel unsafe coming forward, right? So by not giving into my impulses, by not, allowing myself to have wants and needs, I got really comfortable in a body that liked to be hidden. And so like I got trained in the Enneagram and didn't use it. I went on to run a communications division and did leadership development for a health system for 10 years. And it was when my boss was like, "Oh, you know how to do this? Like, do it, bring it in. Let's do it with our team."
Yeah.
And then when other leaders found out of it, they were like, "You do it," and then all of a sudden I'm doing all of this Enneagram work that I didn't ask for, that I didn't want to do. And the more I learned about myself and that tug between the social dominant and the 7, the more I realized how fearful I was to give in to the things that I wanted, right? And if other people wanted them, great, I was all in. But if I wanted them, it was really hard. And it wasn't until 2021 where I started an Instagram page about living the Enneagram, because I was pissed at all the bad information out there. And I had a friend who was like, "If you're so angry about it, go put better information out there." And I was terrified. So I think that single learning has really helped me battle with that impulsivity that I don't give into, I don't naturally listen to.
And so you did mention this word that I think is really at the core of this work, which is safety. And we could have 8 more episodes on this, but I think that is one of the most important things about this tool, is that we can start to see how we may, even though we are physically safe, financially safe, like all of these things in our lives, we can start to see where we experience a lack of safety and where that makes us behave in a certain way. And so for me, like with the type 3, it is all about being valuable to others. And oftentimes the type 3 is talked about being successful and having an image of success and, being competitive and being image conscious and all these things. And those are all true in variations for different people, right? But what it really is about is like, how can I be valuable to people in order to earn my connection to people, in order to earn belonging? Like, I need to be valuable to others in order to like have a place in the tribe, in order to be safe. If I have a place, if I have that belonging, if I have that connection to people, maybe individuals, maybe societally, maybe family, whatever it is, I will be safe in the world. And that thing cognitively doesn't make any sense. I am safe in the world. I have a family that loves me and would support me. I have friends. I have, when I found Enneagram, like a good corporate job that pays me really well, right? I was safe. But the perception of the lack of safety when I have to share needs with people, when I fail at something, the perception that will break a connection for me, like that understanding of our sense of safety and how it's operating inside of us at all times, even when it doesn't make sense. Like, I am safe in the world and I feel a threat to my safety, existentially speaking, emotionally speaking, when X, Y, and Z happens. And I think that's like so important to kind of like understand about a tool that goes this deep.
Exactly. And also where I've seen the edge of the Enneagram, it sort of stops there in the recognition of it, and why I've sort of bellied out to somatic experiencing, because it's like, well, now I have this information around what it looks like to name what feels safe and unsafe, but what do I do with it, right? And so coupling somatic experiencing with the knowledge and the awareness and the language that the Enneagram has provided has been transformational for my body.
It goes back to these kind of core childhood beliefs, and there are a couple things that have been newer namings for me, maybe not like totally new concepts, but things that I have seen in a different light. One of them being kind of like these core childhood beliefs of the type, and they're all different in all the different books, right? So there's always different language, but the one that actually Enneagram Prison Project uses, which an organization I've been involved in, is for the type 3. It's not okay to have my own identity or my own feelings. And seeing how that belief has played out through my life, especially in my early years, and not because of anything in particular that my family did, right? Like some of this is inborn. And so what do I pick up on? I pick up on my identity needs to be the thing that's most valuable to my parents, or it's not okay to have my own feelings because like that just actually gets in the way of me having this connection to people. So like if I just tuck them away, then I can have this connection. But like it's not at all a coincidence that my business, this thing that I find a lot of purpose in and that I love, is all about authenticity, because that has truly been my journey of I can exist really well within a system. I can be a great friend. I can be successful at work. I can do all these things. But like, what is true to me? Like, am I existing as my authentic self in these spaces?
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to outsource validation. And it's especially in the United States or in Western cultures, it's rewarded to do what everyone else sees as valuable and to not stop and turn inward and be like, but what do I actually want to be doing? And that like type 3 thing, it makes it, I think, particularly difficult for type 3s to want to do the work, because everything in our culture rewards us to be in those patterns.
It's reinforced in a way that isn't for many other types.
Yeah. So are there a couple of things that you can think about in terms of like how you work? So you're also an independent practitioner, consultant. You give yourself whatever titles you want, but you run your own business, right? So, and I run my own business. And I think while that comes with a whole host of challenges, it does give us that ultimate autonomy in how we work, in the processes that we follow, in the type of work that we do, or the type of people that we work with. So what about your type has been insightful, and like, what have you done in your business to like tailor how you operate to what works best for you?
Yeah, I would for sure say my relationship with time is very akin to that 7 impulse of like, don't tell me what to do, don't box me in, don't hold me back, like, don't let me get stuck. And so the idea of working like 8 to 5 every day, sitting at a desk, and I did that. I mean, I did that for, 15 years in corporate America, burnt out, like crispy, burnt out. And so in my own world, it's been a lot of deconstructing my relationship with time and figuring out, I do like a little bit of structure. I do feel good in a little bit of structure, but I also like a little bit of freedom. And so I have probably, in the last couple of years of working solely for myself, changed my hours of operation like every semester, right? Or every season, around what my kids need, around my husband's schedule, around what's going on. And that fluidity and flexibility has really aligned with that pinchy part of the 7. And then the part of that social 7 that likes to have impulses and give away, I really love giving away all of my knowledge. And so I offer a lot of resources for free. I offer some of my time for free. In my sessions, I give way more than I've been coached to do less. And I'm like, I'm not going to. Like, that's just not authentic to me. And so I'm not a gatekeeper, and I want folks to have access to the things that helped me grow in any way that I can.
I mean, I can see like in the structure of your business how that plays out. Like, you have an Instagram account that has tons of information and it's free, right? It's there, and you have a lot of no to very low cost resources for people. So it's like all that brain power that you have, like you're funneling into these things that are very, very available and accessible to people. And then I also see like the intellectual stimulation of it all, of like what a type 7 needs. Like, you're a student. Like, I think I'm a lifelong student. Like, you're like, you give a new definition to that. And so how does being intellectually stimulated like play a role in your professional work?
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because I don't even consider that, because that's just my norm, right? Like, I drive my family bananas because they'll tell me something and I'll ask 9 million questions because I just want to know all of it. I want to I'm not questioning like a 6 where I'm trying to poke holes in it. I'm like consuming, like I want it all. I want more. And so, yeah, that doesn't even register because it's just part of me. But yeah, I love being intellectually stimulated, and I love folks coming with the like, I have this thing that I can't get through, and it's like, yes, every time when we break it through, I'm like, it's my jam.
Yeah. Interesting. I think for me, like a couple of things that I lean into in my business that are like on brand with the type, right? That are aligned with the type is like, I do love to be in the front of the room. I do love to like shine. I do like, right? And the things that make you feel nauseous are like the things that I'm like, it fuels something in me to be able to like, I like the attention. And I mean, not in all times and all places in my life, right? But like, there's something to me about being someone who is at the front of the room, who can show people something, can inspire them. And the more that I do things that are authentic to me in my business, the more that I know that actually really comes through. Because it's like, I can give a shiny presentation, but like, it doesn't energize me in a way that if I'm really being true and authentic to myself, to do that, right? And I actually really love the like, and this is very true for a type 3, like when a type 3 is like in their heart, that like the energy spills over into other people. And kind of that like also seeing people's potential, seeing my own potential and wanting to get there in terms of like having a business where I'm constantly learning is like a great fit, where I can constantly be like bettering myself. And I say that with, a little bit of yuck, because like, we don't need to constantly be like the best version of ourselves, but I'm in pursuit of always getting better, always like showing up that's in a way that's in alignment with like how I want to be in the world. and that inspires other people and that sets an example for other people. And so I get to do that in my business. And I get to coach people who are like incredible humans that don't always see the stuff that they are so great at. And I get to help them. Like, I get to hold up a mirror to be like, this is what you're amazing at. Like, you talk about it more, use it more, like scream it from the rooftops, right? And so that thing for me feels really like a very good fit.
And you're so good at it. For somebody who has benefited from your cheerleading, it's awesome.
You just can work on receiving my compliments better. How about that?
Yeah, no. That is work for another day.
Now, one thing that I've noticed that highlights the work that I need to be doing is like comparison, feedback, external validation. So that's something I think in my business that I've noticed too. And like when I'm out in the world, I don't have a boss that's doing a performance review. Yeah. How am I getting that? But how am I giving it to myself versus how I'm searching for it from other people? So that's like a big piece of work I'm still, sorting through.
Yep. Because it doesn't end.
Any kind of parting thoughts for someone who is exploring this tool? I'm like laughing because it's like, yes, I have 8.
Well, I think you summed it up really well in that it sort of deconstructs this idea of like being the best version of yourself, right? That we need to improve or get better. But this tool helps us get bigger, right? It helps us hold, because our knowing our dominant type is really just understanding the most like constricted, limited version of ourselves, right? When I'm acting like my social 7 or you're acting like your type 3, you're not getting all of us. And so it's this idea that we get to grow bigger and grow around it and hold more and expand, that we can tolerate all of us that is delightful and amazing, and then the stuff that's hard. And so I think this tool has the capacity to do that.
I think I am just going to maybe direct folks over to, if you want to get started with the tool, episodes 20 and 21, we'll put them in the show notes. I talk about just like the basics of the framework, how to find your type, what can you learn from it from a professional standpoint. So I'll direct folks over there if you've made it this far in the episode and you're excited to maybe dip your toe in. Thank you so much for being on and having this conversation with me.
I love being here.